today we are going to be talking about similar figures and proportions. Okay? Now, you did receive your vocabulary, which has 3 different vocabulary words today. Our first one being similar, which similar means figures that have the same shape but not necessarily the same size. Corresponding sides are matching sides of 2 or more polygons. And lastly, corresponding angles are matching angles of 2 or more polygons. And you'll see more about the corresponding sides, well, right now. Okay? In order for us to determine if 2 figures are similar, we need to, well, figure out whether or not the corresponding sides or corresponding angles are proportional. So let's take a look at our 3 shapes that we have here. Okay, and I've taken the liberty to trace the corresponding sides. Now, what it means by corresponding side is, for example, this top rectangle right here, this green side right here, corresponds to the green side on this larger rectangle down here. Okay, those are the same side on the different shape. The same thing with the blue. Okay, the blue side of this small rectangle corresponds with the blue side of this larger rectangle. Okay, so if we were going to create a ratio using these 2 corresponding sides, we could simply take the measurement for each of these, for example 4 and 8, turn those into a fraction right here, and we do the same thing with the larger rectangle, 5 and 10, then we could simplify those 2 ratios to see if they equal each other. That'll tell us if these 2 rectangles are similar. Well, 4 over 8 is the same thing as a half. 5 over 10, again, that's the same thing as a half. So these two rectangles are similar. Now, obviously, this parallelogram down here on the bottom, that one is not similar to these 2 because, well, I mean, it's not even the same shape. But that's how we determine whether 2 shapes are similar. So let's take a look at your notes that you got. And let's start up here at the top. The first thing I'm going to do is identify the corresponding sides. Now, the corresponding sides, remember, are the same side on the different shape, or on the different shape. For example, these 2 green sides that I just outlined there, those are corresponding sides. Now, the triangles are flip-flopped around, so they're not necessarily located in the same exact place, but we know that this one is flipped upside down, and we know these are the short sides, so those have to be the corresponding sides. Okay, and then our medium side right here, and then finally the long side is located, well, on the bottom and the top of these 2 triangles. Now, I color-coded those so it would be easier for us to identify which one of those are corresponding. So let's take a look. The first question here says AB, side AB, corresponds to, well, let's look. AB is on the small triangle here, and that's the green side. So over here on the larger triangle, it's also going to be the green side, but that's going to be side DE. So in this box right here, we're going to put DE. Okay? Now, what about BC? What side does BC correspond to? Yes, EF. Okay, and finally AC, which is the red side. What side does that correspond to? Yes, DF. Those are my corresponding sides. Now, after I have identified the corresponding sides, I'm going to write ratios. That way I can plug those numbers in to help determine if these 2 triangles are similar or not. Now, they simply took the two sides that I had up here. For example, AB corresponds to DE. Well, those are my two green sides right there. And they made fractions with them. AB over DE, BC over EF, AC over DF. Now, down here, what I need to do is I actually need to substitute those values in for those letters, because the letters don't do me any good. Okay, so AB is 4. DE is 16. BC is 7. EF is 28. AC is 10. DF is 40. Okay? Once I have those fractions, now I can simplify each one to determine if they equal each other. If they equal each other, then my two triangles are similar. If they don't, then they're not. So, 4 over 16, what does that simplify to? Yeah, 1/4. What about 7/28? Yeah, 1/4, 7 goes into both of those. And finally, 10 over 40, 1/4. Yeah, those all equal each other, and since the ratios of the corresponding sides are equal, the triangles are similar. Now, you have questions like this on your homework as well. And it asks you, and I'll show you exactly what I'm looking for on your homework. We'll do number 1 together, so you know exactly what I want your answers to look like, because I don't want you to leave something out that's important, because each question actually has multiple parts that we're looking for. Okay, questions on that top portion? Ratios? Okay. Let's take a look at our bottom section. Now, the bottom section looks at the shapes like we did up here, but it also looks at the angles, because one quick and easy way to determine if shapes are similar or not is whether or not they have corresponding angles. Like if these angles were different, which it's kind of easy to see these, because if you look at all these, it tells you, I mean, they're all the same. But if these angles were different, then these shapes could not be similar. Now, all of our angles are the same, so we can't base our decision on that. So let's see. The corresponding angles corresponding angles of the figures have equal measures. That's just what we were talking about. And it says we want to write each set of corresponding sides as a ratio. Okay, so down here on this bottom section, what it's asking us to do is it's asking us to write these as fractions. And we could go ahead and identify our corresponding sides again. This one is a little bit easier because the shapes are lined up the same, meaning you know, the tops are the same, the bottoms are the same. So it makes it a little bit easier for me to identify my sides. So once we have all those corresponding sides identified, makes our jobs a little bit easier. Okay, so I'm going to have mn over qr. So if I were to write that, it would actually be written mn over qr, and then no corresponds to rs, so that would be like no over rs, and then op over st, and finally MP over QT. Yeah, that's what goes in your boxes right there. And basically what this is preparing us for is right underneath here is we just set up our ratios, and then we're going to fill in those letters with numbers. That way we can determine whether or not these things are similar. Now it says determine whether the ratios of the lengths of the corresponding sides are proportional. Now, what it's talking about here for the proportional, remember proportional just means equal. It's asking us, says, are these equal? That's what it's asking us. Okay, so we're going to write each the ratio using the corresponding sides. Well, we use that word so many times a day. Okay, our corresponding sides. Now, when we substitute those links in there, like what we have right here, look, this MN over QR, that's the same thing as 6 over 9. NO over RS, that's 8 over 12. OP over ST, that's 4 over 6. And finally, MP over QT, that's 10 over 15. Now, let's simplify those. What does 6 over 9 equal when we simplify it? Yeah, 2/3. What about 8 over 12? 2/3. What about 4 over 6? 2/3. What about 10 over 15? Yeah, 2/3. Okay, do those all equal each other? Yes, and because they all equal each other, then our shape is similar. If they did not all equal each other, then our shape would not be similar. Now, that's important because on your homework this evening, it actually asks you to identify whether these shapes are similar or not. Okay? And along with that, well, on your homework, there's actually a few things that we're going to do. And let's take a look. I'll show you on number 1. Are we all finished copying this? Okay, well, if you're not, keep on copying. I'm going to move it up a little bit so I can put your assignment underneath here. Is everybody through that portion right there? Yes? No? Okay. Now, let's take a look at your homework on number 1. That's your homework underneath there. You don't have to copy that down. This is actual your worksheet. Now, the directions say identify the corresponding sides in each pair of triangles, then use ratios to determine whether the triangles are similar. So, I actually expect to see the corresponding sides and also the ratios written, just like what we did on our notes. Okay, so what I should see on your assignment would be something like this. There's 2 lines there, and you'll have both lines filled up. Okay, and what I mean by that is, like, on the first line, I would expect to see, your ratios, like the blue lines. Okay, so we might have like AB over DE, and we could set that equal to AC over DF, and we set that equal to, say, BC, which is my orange line, over my orange line on the big triangle, which is EF. Okay, that would be like the first line on number 1. Okay, now once we have that written, now we need to actually fill in those values for those letters. Okay, so AB is 2, so we would have 2 over D, which would be 6. Set that equal to AC, which is 6, over DF, which is 12, which BC is 7, and EF is 14. Now, once we have those, now we need to simplify like we did on our